Welcome to the Jeffers Brief, only on Contra Radio Network.
Hello again, John Jeffers here, the Jeffers Brief here on Contra Radio Network. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Glad you're all here. Hey, before we get started, got a lot to talk about. Actually, a couple big things I want to talk about. However, before I get started, let me say this, my friends. I want to say welcome to our new listeners in the Seychelles and the United Arab Emirates. They have come on board. They're listening now. And as for our friends in Australia, welcome to our listeners in Queensland, in Canada, in the provinces of New Brunswick and Yukon. Welcome. And something interesting here in the U.S., Arkansas. Man, you guys have come on strong. Welcome to CRN. Glad you're here. I really am. All right, let's get started with this. I've said it many times before, CRN is not just for preppers, it's for patriots. And many times this subculture does overlap. So here's something that's interesting for you preppers. And you patriots might want to think about this too, because it kind of applies to you too. Can you predict how it's all going to go down? That's the Charles York attempts to answer just that. Preppers, perhaps more than anyone, spend a disproportionate amount of time analyzing, wondering, and even perhaps darkly fantasizing about the big one. The event that will set society, perhaps the entire country, even the world, up on its end. It's in our nature to try and discern what the future holds. What threats might be out there waiting in the dark of the unknown. There's nothing wrong with it so long as your pondering is not done idly, combined with the drive to prepare. This is the core principle of prepping. Be ready, just in case. But the intelligent prepper will take this line of inquiry one step further. What would I best spend my time and energy preparing for? A prepper, clever or just more concerned, will go yet further and ask, how can you prepare for anything if you don't know what it is? Now, it's a good question, so long as one does not allow it too far into paranoia and nihilism. And we should strive to answer it. We have only so much time, energy, and financial resources to prepare for any given threat. And though many preps are universal in their benefit, not all crises can be mitigated or avoided with a one-size-fits-all approach. So let's explore the more esoteric side of prepping, and let's discuss prepping philosophies for predicting and preparing for, or at least trying to, various threats and disasters. So let's start with the sliding scale of threat awareness. Preppers are an ideologically diverse lot. And for every real-life, no-kidding doomsday survivor waiting on rogue comet or titanically destructive reversal of Earth's magnetic poles, from the safety of his definitely up-to-the-code do-it-yourself underground bunker complex, you'll have a weekend warrior prepper who is dead serious about self-reliance and self-rescue in case the next big flood happens. Now, there's no right or wrong way to prep. Sure, there exists a more or less codified set of principles that should guide your decision-making process based on logical predictions and assumptions. But what makes sense, or what you could be unthinkable for one of our associates down the road, or even actively detrimental to their chances of survival. So what is the most interesting thing to me is how varied the lenses are through which any given prepper views their world. Some have been energized by the potential of a big one, a black swan event, the paradigm shift that sets history going in an entirely new era and calendar. So you have before the big one and after the big one. There are the classic doomsday preppers. They see preparing for mundane and everyday mishaps, emergencies, lesser crises as secondary to the mission. And they reason if they are ready, really ready for the apocalypse, then all manner of minor curveballs or mere bedlam will fall under that umbrella. Then you have the times are changing preppers, the ones who sense a shift in the order of things, a detection in the simmering now of sentiment and hostility. They fear the pot may boil over, for the heat is turned off, and this instinct of defense and preparation almost vestigial in these times, has set them scurrying like an ant, making ready for winter. And to them, the event will take the form of a man-made or at least a man-ushered catastrophe, a flipping of the table on society. And they rightly stay concerned over where they may land amid the rubble and wreckage of even a soft revolution. And then you have the ruthless pragmatics, your intrepid hosts, counted among them, preppers who are concerned predominantly with the most likely threats based on activity and environment, no matter how plain and boring they are. The pragmatists will spare not a thought for meteors, solar flares, and other esoteric and rare phenomena when car wrecks, hurricanes, societal unrest is far more likely to impact us in our lifetimes. So here's the thing. All these approaches are valid. At least valid enough in the mind of an individual prepper to get someone off the couch and out of their chair and doing something. But that nagging question that remains unanswered is one: can ever truly predict what will happen? Should we even try? And what are the consequences for failing to predict or prepare for the threat we wind up facing on that fateful day when the excrement hits the oscillator? And that's really what we're looking at here. That's really what we're kind of thinking about. And that's something you should think about also. Not that, look, use common sense guidelines. Yes, unless you have unlimited financial resources, by God, have at it. But if you're like me, I'm not independently wealthy, and therefore I will not be able to spend all that time and money doing that. First of all, do I have the time? Maybe. Do I have the technical know-how? No. I'll be honest about it, no. So something to think about, my friends. Now, for the rest of you, now you patriots out there, and, for the good part, you preppers as well. I've talked about it before, and I'm going to talk about it again. Let's talk about a Civil War preparedness. Can we talk about that? I know it's not exciting, but as a pragmatic prepper, and if you are a prepper, a survivalist, if you will, food and water got to be somewhere at the top of your list. If it's not, why not? And if you don't, why do you even call yourself a prepper? Why even bother? I'm just saying, I'm putting it out there. I'm not telling you what to think. I'm just giving the information. What you do with it is entirely up to you. Who wrote this? Okay. Urban survival site. Great idea. Urban populations continue to grow in size and commonality. Civil conflict and civil war have proven to be a human universal across cultures and eras. If history is any guide, and if current events can be used as a canary in the coal mine, it is only a matter of time before a hot conflict or civil war breaks out in our urban environments, such as it has in Ukraine, Syria, and other locations. So by looking at how others have learned to survive in cities during these dangerous and violent conflicts, we can better prepare ourselves for these circumstances. Cities are not unnecessarily what one thinks of when we think of war, but civilians and soldiers have found themselves in urban struggles throughout our history. So let's do this. We'll get back to you. No, hey, I got to pay the bills, guys. Got to pay the bills. By the way, if you want to get on the newsletter, and you should, it's got some cool stuff in there. Go to ContraRadioNetwork.com, if you would. And, no, we're not answering that. Go to memberships and get it. We'll be right back after this. No, we will, I promise. I promise we will. Welcome back. Thanks for waiting. I appreciate it. Let's get back to it, huh? We were talking about preparedness for food and water, with perhaps the Second American Civil War, or the ACW 2.0, if you will. So a citizen of Rome under siege, starving in 537 AD, is going to have a lot more in common with the starving citizens of Sarajevo in 1992 than you may first think. As Haslow would basically put it, our basic needs as humans have always been water, food, shelter, and security. This has not and will not change. So let's look at one of the important aspects of surviving it, and that's sourcing food and water, something made more difficult by the urban environment. The first major challenge to surviving urban warfare is to keeping a supply of food and water going as the infrastructure is destroyed and imports become scarce. Now, people were not made to live in a city-like structure without advanced trade networks, and areas simply cannot sustain the population. So if you are forced to remain in the area during a conflict, you will have a difficult road ahead, one that requires study, practice, and determination to overcome. Now, during World War II, roughly 20 million people died from malnutrition and related diseases, while those killed in combat are estimated at around 19.5 million. While the Geneva Convention prohibits deliberate starvation of a city, it still happens. And deliberate use of starvation is rarely necessary for it to occur. Water also quickly becomes scarce in a city once the infrastructure fails. Now, in the ongoing conflict in Syria, sieges of large urban cities have become commonplace, and a whole profiteering network of traders and smugglers flock from city to city to take advantage of the struggling populations. The Middle East Institute talks about how traders within and outside besieged areas coordinate with businessmen to maintain monopolies of supplies, resulting in significant price hikes of basic goods for besieged civilians. There is also a reference to this correlation between conflict and starvation in the 2015 Global Food Policy Report. Both starvation and dehydration are major concerns in urban environments during civil conflicts, and you need to have a long-term plan to overcome them, whether it's through self-reliance or barter. Now, some cities have outlying farms or food production facilities that may still be in operation that you can barter with. Now, this was the case for many of the Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto of World War II. They would trade and smuggle in food produced by local farmers and by other sectors of the city. In other cases, you'll need to learn to be self-sufficient or grow your own. Now, in Venezuela, as the collapsed, looters began attacking trucks and the trucks that are carrying the food, as well as collection centers and supermarkets. And there was even a video that showed a bunch of men beating a cow to death for food. They're hunting. The people are hungry. Chaos quickly ensues when food runs out. Now, there are tons and tons of articles out there that can help you in obtaining and storing food in an urban environment. Growing and trapping your own food is something you should try and pursue. Otherwise, having a good service you can barter with will be your only other long-term option. Now, trapping may seem strangely niche, but being able to grab rats and other birds may save your life one day. And a good place to start for trapping methods is the survival manual put out by the Army. Small traps for birds, rats, raccoons, squirrels, etc. could help you maintain your proper protein levels. You need to have a stockpile of food and a method for bartering or growing or trapping more if you plan to survive in an urban area during a civil conflict. The less you need to travel and spend time in public places looking and trading for food, the better. Water is also going to be a primary concern. If the water supply of the city is cut off for some reason, chaos and mass exodus, if possible, will soon occur. Now, this happened somewhat recently in Damascus. You can avoid much of this danger that this poses by having a system for procuring and filtering potable water. In an urban environment, you are mostly limited to collecting rainwater, though it is possible to tap urban sources for water. Drains, filters, other water runoff areas are places to strategically place barrels that you can go back and draw from later on. These need not simply sit where you are living. There are many commercial filters you can buy. The versions the Marines are using are a variation of products you can order online. These range from straws to standard pitchers. It is also possible to create your own. The Army Survival Manual describes various methods of water procurement for various climates as well as filtration methods. Everything you do in an urban environment will be a balancing act. Gardening, placing water barrels by your shelter may give away your position, while having you leave home every day to collect water can make you unnecessarily exposed. You must make efforts to hide traps and water collection spots as much as possible, and to avoid them letting others know that you may have supplies to spare. Though this is only scratching the surface of what is possible in terms of water and food procurement in a city that has succumbed to violence and chaos. Hopefully, however, we did touch on the majority of factors that will come into play. Trapping, growing, hiding, bartering, etc. As this Civil War preparation series continues, and I'll look for the other ones, we will continue to touch on other necessary needs like shelter and security. You got the ideas of what you need to kind of keep an eye out looking for. Now there's something else I wanted to get to you. This was sent to me to my good friend, from my good friend Scott Alexander, a retired attorney, who used to be a diehard lib, who has totally flipped. He's now a diehard conservative. And I like talking to him because he understands how the other side thinks, and he counters it. And I got to tell you, I like Scott quite a bit. And he sent this to me, and I told him I would share it with all of you because I think it's pretty interesting. And it's from the American Spectator. I don't know why he was looking at that, but he was. But anyways, he did it. And it says, impeachment vote will kind of cost these Dems their seats. Now, during the 2018 midterms, dozens of moderate Democrats won House seats in swing districts by forswearing partisan feuds in order to concentrate on the needs of their constituents. They pledged to focus less on conflict than on finding common ground with their Republican colleagues. They also modulated their comments concerning President Trump. And when the subject of impeachment arose, insisted that it would be a divisive and unproductive exercise. Last Thursday, however, all but two voted in favor of a hyper-partisan impeachment resolution, exposing their campaign promises as cynical lies and ensuring the Democrats will lose their House majority in 2020. The Democrats, their bluster about the 2018 blue wave notwithstanding, having a particularly tenuous grasp on the House majority. The Republicans, the ground old party, needs to flip only 19 seats in 2020 to regain control. And the NRCC, the National Republican Congressional Committee, has already identified more than twice that number of vulnerable Democrats in districts won by Trump in 2016. Thursday's vote has imperiled those weak Democrats even further by graphically illustrating that there really is no such thing as a moderate Democrat. Now, we're going to talk about this list of Democrats who promised their constituents they would rise above the corrupting influence of the Washington establishment and are now likely to lose their House seats. First on the list is Representative Joe Cunningham of South Carolina. In 2018, Cunningham beat a weak opponent by fewer than 4,000 votes in South Carolina's 1st District. During his campaign, and until just recently, he spoke of impeachment in the following terms, quote, "I've warned members of my own party that a partisan rush to impeach the president would be bad for the country," end quote. Last Tuesday, however, he announced that he would vote for the resolution. Like most of these fake moderates, he will tell his constituents that Thursday's vote merely affirmed an ongoing investigation. This will not mollify the voters to whom he so brazenly lied. In a district that the president won by 13 points in 2016, Congressman Cunningham is a dead Democrat walking. Next up on our list, Representative Max Rose, Democrat, New York. Rose defeated Republican Dan Donovan in 2018 in New York City's last Republican stronghold, the 11th District. Like Cunningham, he told his constituents he was against impeachment. In fact, he wrote an op-ed that included the following denunciation of any such course of action. He quotes, Impeachment will not improve the lives of the hardworking Staten Islanders and South Brooklynites that I fight for every day, end quote. But Congressman Rose had an impeachment epiphany after he arrived in Washington. The president won New York 11 by 10 points in 2016. So with Trump at the top of the ticket again in 2020, plus a strong Republican opponent backed by the NRCC, Representative Rose is very likely a goner. Representative Kendra Horn, a Democrat of Oklahoma, she narrowly defeated incumbent Steve Russell in Oklahoma's 5th district, a major upset in a state dominated by the GOP. Her margin was painfully thin, and her victory is no doubt facilitated by her alleged opposition to impeachment. As recently as a month ago, she was still trying to have it both ways when talking to her constituents. Quote, while I did support impeachment inquiry, I certainly know that these are serious allegations that should be investigated, end quote. Yet when Thursday arrived and she had an opportunity to keep her promise or cave to political pressure, she opted to betray the voters who elected her. Representative Horn won her seat by a mere 1.4% in a district Trump carried by 14 points in 2016. She'll be history in 2020. Well, she will. And we're going to continue this after I get back. Because again, I still got to pay the bills, guys. So, by all means, stay with me and we'll take care of this. ContraRadioNetwork.com. Check it out. Please, we've got some sponsors. Please feel free to patronize them, or patronize them as you will be. All right, we'll be back after this. Well, at least I hope so. All right, welcome back as we continue on with our list of Democrats walking who are not going to make it. This one is Chodol Torres Small, a Democrat of New Mexico. Now, Small is yet another candidate who ran in 2018 as a different kind of Democrat and eked out a narrow victory over Republican Yvette Harrell. Some of you might remember her, yes? All right. And she is from the New Mexico's 2nd Congressional District. Small did suggest a creative way to dodge the resolution. Quote, the president's conversation with the Ukrainian president must be investigated. Designating this as an impeachment inquiry, though, let's see, what you say? Yeah, okay. I got to make sure, because I'm kind of losing it because she kind of goes off. The president must be investigated. Designating this as an impeachment inquiry, though, has led some of the public to believe that a conclusion has been reached while facts are still being gathered, end quote. Yet she kept her toe on the party line during Thursday's vote. Torres Small won her House seat by 1.8%, and a district Trump won by 10 points. She should update her resume. Next up on our hit list, Representative Anthony Brindisi, Democrat, New York. Brindisi defended Republican Claudia Tenney to win New York's 22nd district, and has always claimed to be adverse to impeachment. After the fabled phone call between Presidents Trump and Zelensky, however, his position began to evolve. Quote, the thought that any government official, especially our commander-in-chief, would hold up foreign aid to an ally and suggest they investigate a political opponent is a grave and troubling accusation. It is clear that this administration needs to provide answers, end quote. Inevitably, he voted for Thursday's resolution. In 2018, Brindisi won by less than 2 points in a district President Trump won by more than 15 points. He'll be crushed in 2020. Next up, Representative Matt Cartwright, Democrat, Pennsylvania. In 2018, Cartwright fought off a challenge by Republican John Trin in Pennsylvania's 8th district. Cartwright has, unlike the other alleged moderates, not been coy about his support for impeachment. As early as September, he was pretty much committed. Quote, we need to get to the bottom of these serious allegations through incomprehensive impeachment proceedings, end quote. Now, the overall ideological bent of Cartwright's district is difficult to gauge because it was redrawn in 2018 by the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania pursuant to a gerrymandering lawsuit. It is, however, located in a part of the state that the president won by double digits in 2016. Cartwright probably won't survive 2020. Next up, Representative Jared Golden, Democrat, Maine. Now, Golden represents Maine's 2nd district. Despite his failure to win the most votes on Election Day in 2018, pursuant to Maine's ranked choice voting, he was declared the winner several days after the polls closed. He has temporized on the impeachment resolution for some time, but he finally caved to pressure from his caucus the day before the vote. Quote, while I disagreed with the initial decision to open the impeachment inquiry, it is clear that the investigation has confirmed information contained in the whistleblower complaint. End quote. Trump won Maine's 2nd district by more than 10 points in 2018, so it's a pretty good bet that Golden will be departing the House after the 2020 election. Now, in addition to all these moderate Democrats ensconced in districts where President Trump won by double digits, a number occupied districts that he won by more than 6 points. Representative Ben McAdams, Democrat, Utah, won Utah's 4th district by 694 votes in 2018. Trump carried Utah 4 by 7 points in 2016. Representative Antonio Delgado, Democrat, New York, eked out a victory in his first attempt at New York's 19th district in 2018. Trump carried New York 19 by 7 points in 2016. Lisa Slotkin, a Democrat from Michigan, narrowly won her first term in Michigan's 8th district in 2018. Trump won Michigan 8 by 7 points in 2018. Representative Andy Kim, Democrat, New Jersey, won New Jersey's 3rd district by 1.3 points in 2018. President Trump carried New Jersey 3 by more than 6 points in 2016. And the beat goes on. In addition to the 12 listed above, there are 18 more Democrats clinging to districts that Trump won in 2016. That brings the total to 30. Now, as noted above, the Republicans need to flip slightly more than half of these to retake the House. Moreover, the GOP is awash in campaign cash. As Open Secret reports, the RNC continues to dwarf the DNC in fundraising. This means that the GOP project of retaking the House will enjoy 3 major advantages: a target-rich environment, the ability to fund any campaign that shows real promise, and the moral high ground associated with defeating an attempt to oust a president whose faults just do not rise to the level of impeachable offenses. All this brings us back to Thursday's hyper-partisan vote and the resolution that purports to lay out the framework for the next phase of the impeachment inquiry launched by Fiat during a news conference last month. This resolution, departing from 150 years of historical precedent, endows the House Intelligence Committee with extraordinary power over the inquiry. It codifies Adam Schiff's closed-door meetings, severely limits the powers of the Republican minority, and violates the president's right to due process. The Democrats, whose districts were run by Trump in 2016, have signed their own political death warrants by voting for this tawdry resolution. Execution day will be November 3rd, 2020. In case you weren't really up to what the Democrats and Schiff have done when they rewrote the rules for the Soviet-style show trial they're doing. Schiff, the Democrat, has made the rules up along with the Democrats. They voted for this crap. Schiff gets 45 minutes to question anybody that appears. Everybody else gets 5 minutes. I know, I get it. Anybody that the Republicans on the committee wish to call, they have to submit the request in writing and submit to Schiff, who will determine whether or not it's good enough for them to call that person. So in other words, it's Mother May I politics. That's all that is. Ridiculous. I know. What else we got here? No. Maybe. Yeah, we'll do this one. This has become curiouser and curiouser that Sundance has put this out. and I want to share it with you. It'll probably take us into our fourth segment. According to several media reports, AG Barr is scheduled to have a meeting today, the 6th, with Senator Lindsey Graham for an update on the Horowitz-Durham investigations. Now, moments ago, there's this little innocuous sighting popped up amid the D.C. media from Manu Raju. And it says, former GOP representative Dana Rohrabacher spotted in the Capitol. And that was posted at 12:50 p.m. November 6th. Just a coincidence? Maybe it's a coincidence? Maybe not. According to recent reports, Attorney John Durham and Attorney General Bill Barr are spending time on the narrowed focus, looking carefully at CIA activity in the 2016 presidential election. One recent quote from a media voice increasingly sympathetic to a political deep state notes this, quote, one British official with knowledge of Barr's wish list presented to London commented that, quote, it is like nothing we have come across before. They are basically asking in quite robust terms for help in doing a hatchet job on their own intelligence services, end quote. Now, it's interesting that quote comes from a British intelligence official, as there appears to be mounting evidence of an extensive CIA operation, also known as John Brennan, that likely involved UK intelligence services. In addition, and as a direct outcome, there is an aspect to the CIA operation that overlaps both a US and UK need to keep WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange under tight control. Now, we're going to outline and we will explain where the corrupt US-UK interests merge. Now, to understand the risk that Julian Assange represents to the CIA interest, it is important to understand just how extensive the operations John Brennan, the operations of the CIA were in 2016. John Brennan. It is within this network of foreign and domestic operations where FBI agent Strzok is clearly working as a bridge between the CIA and FBI operations. Now, by now, people are familiar with the construct of CIA operations. John Brennan, involving Joseph Mifsud, the Maltese professor, now generally admitted and identified as a Western intel operative, who was tasked by the CIA, John Brennan, to run an operation against Trump campaign official George Papadopoulos in both Rome and in London. Go deep. It's true. Well, it is. It is true. Remember, we got to pay bills again? We got to pay bills again. We're going to continue this into our fourth segment. Don't go away. This is important information we got to get out to you so you understand what's happening, what's going on. What you do with it, whether you believe it or not, I don't know. So far, Sundance, I think, has been pretty close in what he's been doing, what he's been talking about. So you might want to consider hanging out and listening up to it. All right, we'll be back right after the break. Stick around. You won't be sorry, I promise. All right, welcome back. Welcome back. Thanks for hanging out through the bill paying session. So, getting back to it, in a similar fashion, the CIA tasked the U.S. intelligence asset Stephen Halper to target another Trump campaign official. Who was it? George Papadopoulos? No. Another Trump campaign official, Carter Page, under the auspices of being a Cambridge professor. Now, Halper also targeted General Michael Flynn, additionally using assistance from a female FBI agent under the false name Azra Turk. Halper also targeted Papadopoulos. The initial operations to target Flynn, Papadopoulos, and Page were all based overseas. This seemingly makes the CIA, John Brennan, exploitation of the assets and the targets much easier. One of the more interesting aspects to the Durham probe is a possibility of a paper trail created as a result of the tasking operations. We should watch closely for more evidence of a paper trail, as some congressional reps have hinted toward documented evidence, transcripts, recordings, reports, that are exculpatory to the targets, Page and Papadopoulos. Now, Ranking Member Devin Nunes has strongly hinted that very specific exculpatory evidence was known to the FBI, Comey, and yet withheld the FISA application used against Carter Page that also mentions George Papadopoulos. Anyways, going places we shouldn't. All right, however, there is an aspect to the domestic U.S. operation that also bears the fingerprints of the CIA, John Brennan. Only this time, due to the restrictive laws on targets inside the U.S., the CIA aspect is less prominent. This is where FBI Strzok, working for both agencies, starts to become important. Remember, it's clear in the text message, Strzok has a working relationship with what he called their sister agency, the CIA. Additionally, Brennan has admitted Strzok helped write the January 2017 Intelligence Community Assessment, which outlines the Russian narrative. And it is almost guaranteed the July 31st, 2016 electronic communication from the CIA to the FBI that originated FBI Operation Crossfire Hurricane was co-authored from the CIA, John Brennan, by Strzok. Strzok immediately used that electronic communication to travel to London to debrief intelligence officials around Australian ambassador to the UK, Alexander Downer. In short, Strzok appears to be very eager, profoundly overzealous James Bond wannabe who acted as a bridge between the CIA and the FBI. That perfect type of FBI career agent for CIA Director John Brennan to utilize. Now, Fusion GPS founder Glenn Simpson hired CIA open source analyst Nellie Orr toward the end of 2015. At approximately the same time as FBI contractors were identified exploiting the NSA database and extracting information on a specific set of U.S. persons. It is also Fusion GPS founder Glenn Simpson who was domestically tasked with a Russian lobbyist named Natalia Veselnitskaya. A little reported Russian Deputy Attorney General named Sak Albertovich Karapetyan was working double agents for the CIA and Kremlin. Now, Karapetyan was directing the foreign operations of Natalia Veselnitskaya, and Glenn Simpson was organizing her inside the U.S. Now, Simpson managed Veselnitskaya through the 2016 Trump Tower meeting with Donald Trump Jr. However, once the CIA Fusion GPS operation using Veselnitskaya started to unravel with public reporting, back in Russia, Deputy AG Karapetyan fell out of a helicopter to his death. Say it ain't so. Oh, by the way, he fell out to his death just before it crashed. Simultaneously timed in late 2015 to the mid-2016, there was a domestic FBI operation using a young Russian named Maria Butina, tasked to run up against Republican presidential candidates. According to Patrick Byrne, Butina's handler, it was FBI agent who? Peter Strzok, who was giving Byrne the instructions on where to send her. All this context outlines the extent to which the CIA, John Brennan, was openly involved in constructing a political operation that settled upon anyone in candidate Donald Trump's orbit. Now, international operations directed by the CIA, John Brennan, and domestic operations seemingly directed by Peter Strzok, operating with a foot in both agencies. So to recap, Mifsud tasked Papadopoulos, CIA. Halper tasked against Flynn, CIA. Page, CIA. Papadopoulos, CIA. Azra Turk, pretending to be Halper assistant, tasked against Papadopoulos, FBI. Veselnitskaya, tasked against Donald Trump Jr., CIA Fusion GPS. Butina, tasked against Trump and Donald Trump Jr., FBI. Now, additionally, Chris Steele was a British intel officer hired by Fusion GPS to assemble and launder fraudulent intelligence information within his dossier, and we cannot forget Oleg Deripaska, a Russian oligarch who was recruited by Assistant FBI Director McCabe, a proven liar, to participate in running an operation against the Trump campaign and create the impression of Russian involvement. Deripaska refused to participate. All of this engagement directly controlled by U.S. intel, and all is intended to give a specific Russian impression. This predicate is presumably what John Durham is currently reviewing. The key point of all that background is to see how committed the CIA, John Brennan, and FBI, Comey, were to the constructive narrative of Russia interfering in the 2016 election. The CIA, FBI, and by extension the DOJ put a hell of a lot of work into it. Intel community work that Durham is now unraveling. We also know specifically that Durham is looking into the construct of the intelligence community assessment and talking to CIA analysts who participated in the construct of the January 2017 report that boasted the false appearance of Russian interference in the election. This is important because it ties to the next part that involves Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. Are your eyes spinning yet? Are they becoming glazed over? Do you look like a deer in the headlights yet? Because this is how big and involved it is. And they want it that way. They want you to become so confused that you just say, screw it, I can't even wrap my mind around it anymore. They want you to forget. You have to remember something. Government knows the American population in general has a short-term memory. And they're counting on it to get away with this coup attempt. On April 11, 2019, the Julian Assange indictment was unsealed in the Eastern District of Virginia. From the indictment, we discovered it was under seal since March 6 of 2018. So it's been there for over a year. On Tuesday, April 15th, more investigative material was released. Again, the dates of grand jury, December of 2017. This means the FBI investigation prior to. So they know about it. Now, the FBI investigation took place prior to December 2017. It was coordinated through the Eastern District of Virginia, where Dana Bonte was a U.S. attorney at the time. The grand jury indictment was sealed from March of 2018 until after Mueller completed his investigation of April 2019. Why the delay? What was the DOJ waiting for? Now, this is where it gets interesting, my friends. The FBI submission to the grand jury of December of 2017 was 4 months after Congressman Dana Rohrabaugh talked to Julian Assange in August of 2017. Assange told a U.S. congressman he can prove the leaked Democratic Party documents did not come from Russia. Now, according to John Solomon from The Hill, August 2017, it says Assange told a U.S. congressman on Tuesday he can prove the leaked Democratic Party documents he published during last year's election did not come from Russia and promised additional helpful information about the leaks in the near future. Rohrabaugh, a California Republican who is friendly to Russia and chairs an important House Committee on Eurasia Policy, became the first American congressman to meet with Assange during a 3-hour private meeting at the Ecuadorian Embassy in London, where the WikiLeaks co-founder has been holed up. Now Rohrabaugh has recounted his conversation with Assange to The Hill. That's how Solomon knows about it. Only got 2 minutes left, really? This new format kills me. It does. All right, knowing how much effort the CIA and the FBI put into the Russia collusion conspiracy, the narrative, it would make sense for the FBI to take keen interest after this August 2017 meeting between Rohrabaugh and Assange. And why the FBI would quickly gather specific evidence related to WikiLeaks and Bradley Manning for a grand jury by December 2017. Within 3 months of the grand jury, the DOJ generated an indictment and sealed it in March of 2018. The Eastern District of Virginia sat on the indictment while a Mueller probe was ongoing. As soon as the Mueller probe ended on April 11, 2019, a planned and coordinated effort between the UK and US was executed. Assange was forcibly arrested and removed from the Ecuadorian embassy in London, and the indictment was unsealed. Now, Sundance, who has researched this 3-year fiasco, including the ridiculously false 2016 Russia hacking interference narrative, 17 intelligence agencies, joint analysis report needed for Obama's anti-Russia narrative December 16th, and then a month later, the ridiculously political intel community assessment in January 17th. This timing against Assange is just too coincidental. All right. Before we go, I will have a bonus episode, if you will, and it will be if you become a member of Contra Radio Network. Go to ContraRadioNetwork.com, ContraRadioNetwork.com. Go ahead, become a member, and you will get this finished bonus episode. Until then, I'm John Jeffers. Hey, thanks for listening. I appreciate it. And we will see you next week. Until that time, listen to all the rest of the shows we have here on Contra Radio Network. We'll see you then. Have a good one.